Here's 5 small and easy changes Smite can make to improve the game. These won't be new content or massive sweeping changes that take a lot of effort to implement. Just simple, quick changes that can be done extremely easily but would improve the game a ton in my opinion. First up, I have something that I've been calling for in the game for a while, and that is to reduce the base physical power scaling on basic attacks to 85% from the 100% that it is now. This change is specifically aimed at nerfing AA cancelling assassins, which if you've been playing Smite any time in the last couple of years have been unreasonably dominant in the jungle. Thanatos, Thor, Susano, Lance to a certain extent, among others, just refuse to not be meta despite significant changes to the game and specific nerfs to many of them. There are other reasons these gods are strong of course, but a large part of it that they all share are their crazy good auto attack cancels. Now to be clear, I'm all for AA cancelling being in the game and being strong. I think it's a great skill expressive mechanic that can up your game on certain gods, and it's absolutely a positive for the game. But sometimes adding 4 to 500% power scaling to a god's combo in such a short period of time can be too much, and it's half the reason these gods have been so sticky in the meta despite specific changes to make them weaker. This problem has only become worse in the game as more power has been added on items. When Smite was originally designed and this 100% number was decided upon, there was far less power available in your build than there is now. If this 85% scaling thing was implemented, you would have to make changes elsewhere in the game, like potentially just straight up giving hunters an additional 15% power scaling on their autos just for being a hunter, in order to not nerf them too hard, as that's not the intention of this kind of a change. Other specific cases like auto attack assassins might have to be looked at as well, but I think overall having the game set up this way is better and could be balanced after the fact if need be. Alright, so my next change is a really simple one: bring back power and protection hybrid items. We've all seen the generally positive reception to high-res reversing patch 9.5, and I think reverting the bruiser item removal that happened at the start of year 10 would also be a great move. Smite existed with these kinds of items for 10 years prior to this change, and if anything, the patch 9.5 revert and my potential 85% power scaling change would nerf these kind of items, as you wouldn't be forced into buying some early power on solo laners to compete in lane clear, since most solos can now clear the lane just fine after the 9.5 revert, and taking away 15% of that extra damage on every auto attack from the power from these items would make them less attractive. I know there have been issues with junglers abusing hybrid items early on, but I have a solution for just that problem, which is my next simple change for the list. Tweak the protection formula to be less potent early on, but more potent later on in the protection curve. For those unaware, protections in Smite do not scale linearly. They follow this formula, which has diminishing returns built into it. Your first 100 protections halves the damage you take, but to halve the damage you take again, you need 300 protections, an additional 200. There is a concept called effective health, which essentially means the total raw damage before mitigations you would need to take in order to die, which does scale up linearly with protections. In simple terms, if you have 1000 health and 0 protections, it takes 1000 damage to kill you. If you have 100 protections, you take half damage, so it would take 2000 raw damage to kill you. If you have 200 protections, you take 1/3 damage, so it takes 3000 damage to kill you, and so on. In Smite, I think the protections formula itself inherently favors people only building 1 or 2 defense items and inherently disincentivizes people stacking their build with full defense items. Add on to that the protection cap that is unreasonably low, and how effective and available percent penetration is, with basically every mid and ADC build having at least 40% pen, and the whole way the game is set up encourages you to build only 1 or 2 defense items rather than actually building full tank. This is most of the reason why hybrid items were abused so much in the jungle, and I think tweaking the protections formula so it's not as effective early on in this curve but is a bit more effective later on would curb these kinds of builds where you just slot in 1 or 2 defense items and encourage tanks to actually build full tank without getting so heavily punished by the way protections work and how available percent pen is. I'm not a math wizard, so I don't have an exact formula that should replace the existing one to do this, but maybe someone smarter than me can leave a comment with a formula that would work for what I'm requesting here. Just to clarify, I'm not saying each protection point should be strictly worth more the more you have. I just think it should be worth a bit more than it is right now. It should still be worth less. Make this change and you could re-implement bruiser items with the proper trade-off for tanks and have them be abused less on a single defense item for junglers. Moving on, my next simple tweak is somewhat of a hot take, and that is to add all chat to Smite. I know, dealing with toxic teammates is bad enough, and having the enemy team BM you as well isn't ideal, but in a way they could already do that by direct messaging you if they wanted to. At least on PC they can. And the mute button does exist for those toxic people that would abuse this feature. You could also make it an opt-out where people could just go into settings and straight up turn off all chat permanently if they find no value in it and don't want to deal with the enemy team being toxic. There's easy failsafes that can be implemented, and I think all chat will bring a lot of value to Smite, both in terms of finding common ground with your lane opponent and chatting about their builds, plays, etc., as well as some friendly banter and shit talking if they outplay you or you outplay them in the laning phase. As I said, this is probably a hot take and it's something I doubt Hi-Rez would ever add due to the amount of complaints that Smite is already a toxic game, but I think making it opt out and having the mute button will be enough so that people who just don't want to deal with the toxicity that might come from this can just say, nah, not dealing with that. And the people who do enjoy the rivalry, friendly shit talking, and finding respect for your lane opponent's outplays can enjoy that without having to directly message the person. What are your thoughts on this one? The rest of these changes I think will be pretty universally positive for the game, but I can definitely see the argument that all chat wouldn't be universally good for the game and could cause some issues. Let me know down below. But my final change for the video is also a pretty controversial one, and that's removing invade penalties from the game. I think at the very least the invading XP and gold penalty should be removed, but you could even go whole hog and remove the Invaders curse if you wanted to get crazy. This is another one similar to 9.5 and hybrid items where it feels a bit like a blanket band-aid fix to a problem that Hi-Rez couldn't find a creative solution to. It just completely shuts down any potential of invades, which I think are a cool mechanic and an interesting way to play the game and express your skill and knowledge. Sure, invades, especially level 1 invades, can be toxic to play against if they are the literal meta and happen every single game. But I think Hi-Rez could find a way to make sure they're a niche but viable option, without just completely removing them from the game as they did with the Invaders curse. If they don't want to risk removing the Invaders curse, I think at the very least they should remove the XP and gold penalty from invading camps and just make them worth the same amount as your camps. As that change affects the entire first 15 minutes of the match, where I think invades are absolutely a core part of the game and should be viable, if not encouraged. Level 1 invades can be problematic, but invades past that point are just straight up good for the game in my opinion, as a risky but effective way to push your lead that does have counterplay. But that's my 5 simple and small changes Smite could make to massively improve the game. What do you think of these? Let me know down below and maybe even drop your own minor simple changes that could be made in the comments. Huge thank you to Eisenscourge for his Kappa King patronage over on Patreon, and I'll catch you guys in another one later on. Have a great day, and peace out, you nerds.